Janisha Jones. I am CEO of Freshman Sassy Productions, an ecosystem of safe spaces for women of color in the music business. I've spent the last decade as a data analyst as well as a music publishing expert. And as a woman of color at the intersection of music and technology, that makes me an anomaly in this space. But my mission is to change that. I am host of Pub Royalty Queen podcast, where I've interviewed over 24 women of color about their challenges navigating a white male-dominated industry. And in order to legitimize their anecdotal experiences, as well as my own, I produced the first research study on intersectionality in the music business called A Seat at the Table, a perspective on women of color in the music business. So what I like to do before I begin is start off with an experiment. Raise your hand if your direct supervisor or CEO of your company identifies as a white male. Okay, quite a bit of you. Raise your hand if they identify as a woman or non-binary. Okay, keep your hand raised if they also identify as a person of color. Okay. So what we just demonstrated is that there is an imbalance in senior leadership positions. What this study does not do, it is not a history of race in this country or around the world. It's also not about bashing men. What this is about is creating more equitable opportunities for the most marginalized among the music community. So what I've done is surveyed over 100 women of color around the world. The majority of women of color in the music business range between the ages of 26 and 35. We tend to see that subside after the age of 46, which this presentation will show why that is. We also determined that most of these women identified as Black in or of the African diaspora. However, we did also survey Latina, Asian, Middle Eastern, Asian, as well as bi and multi-racial groups as well. The majority of women of color in the music industry occupy major metropolitan areas, LA being the top location. However, we did reach the UK, Germany, France, and Australia. It's no surprise that women of color are the most educated group in America. And so the majority of women of color that surveyed or took this survey are earners of at least a bachelor or higher degree of education, about 93%. However, the majority of women of color also took out student loan debt in order to finance their education. However, they did also attend higher education, even though they do not believe it had any direct effect on their career. So that speaks to education being used as a form of oppression against a group of people and then adding value because now they have access to it. So we must also acknowledge the fact that the majority of women of color did not attend an HBCU, contrary to popular belief. Many programs are targeting people of color at the HBCU colleges, historically Black colleges and universities. We believe actionable items here would be to create better opportunities to advance and expose women of color to music business curriculum at the high school level. So by the time they reach college, they already have an understanding of what is available to them. As well to offer student loan debt repayment assistance, akin to 401k contributions. Allow women of color to actually determine how they're going to use their investments.
I make sure I include one person. Just one person, and it ends up down the line becoming a long friendship, or you might see them for something else at another job, you run into each other. Like, a lot of things happen down the line, and I also really would recommend don't ever try to burn bridges.
from Club Royalty podcast to create a human element to the data that we're receiving. In terms of internships, the majority of women of color enter via unpaid internships, and without established relationships or connections into the music industry, it creates a direct barrier to entry and direct economic disadvantage. Internships, we know, can affect your bottom line over the span of your career as well. So we must recognize that there is a privilege to be in this industry that a lot of people cannot afford. The opportunities for change here are to commit to paid internships, to offer commuter expense reimbursement, as well as offer lunch stipends and flexible scheduling so that people can take on part-time jobs while they are actually interning. In terms of mentorship, according to a 2018 study titled Women in the U.S. Music Industry, a report released by the Berkeley Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship, mentorship can actually increase your bottom line by $40,000 over the span of your career. So it's unfortunate that only half of women of color have mentors in the music business. And those who do benefit from job offers or recommendations, as well as having access to industry events like this one. Mentorship also provides an opportunity to receive feedback on your work. It allows you to have an opportunity to gain advice about the business from people who have experience. But sponsorship really is the thing that we need to consider as well. Sponsors provide funding and support for career advancement opportunities, and they're the type of people that will say your names where you're not there. The majority of women of color also have same-sex mentors, so it would be great to see more men advocating for women in the music business.
Just because when you're coming up, you're learning, you don't know everything, and so if you come across someone who you just have a great rapport with, you have a great bond with, and that person is genuine and they're doing things that you aspire to do, it's all about learning. It's all about learning and being open enough and being humble enough to understand, like, I don't know everything. Hey, I have this question. What do you think about this? It's not necessarily about how that person can connect you to somebody else, but it's really just about learning, I would say. And then in turn, in the bigger picture, figuring out how you can bring that back around. Like, once you do get to that level, okay, this person helped me, I want to help them. Now I'm in a position, so I want to give back to them, but also continue to bring that back down, bring that back around. Like, this person helped me, I want to help this person.
Due to a lack of exposure and access, most women occupy front-facing roles that are recognized in major publications. So the data shows that most women of color occupy A&R, marketing, and management roles, which will average about $100,000 to $150,000 a year, which is actually not a bad salary. However, the roles that earn significantly more than front-facing roles are those in operational and tech roles, which can exceed beyond $150,000 annually. 37% of women of color have spent at least 10 years in the music business, but only occupy 18% of senior leadership roles. A typical job opportunity for women of color in the music business looks like enduring an application process, sometimes even when you've been recommended for the job, working over 40 hours a week, hardly ever receiving feedback on your work, and if you do, it's on an annual basis. Women of color know their value, they're loyal, they're hard workers, and they're eager to join the workforce. But with limited opportunity to engage with upper management, some may forego asking for a raise even if they know they deserve it.
Always remember, until we have the keys in our hand, we don't have the keys in our hand. And it's fair, and it's not real, and it's a farce that there can only be one of you at a time. The music industry right now, with all these women rappers,
In fact, almost 20% of all women of color report never being promoted. The fact that 2/3 were either promoted because they've taken on a new role, likely because they've gone elsewhere, or because of their experience or contribution shows that there is a willingness to perform, and a lot of times outperforming their white and female counterparts. But there is that level of expectation that companies place on women of color because they are isolated in these working environments. Most women of color report that compensation does cover their living expenses, but they also have other sources of income. So that garners the question, what does the rainy day look like for a woman of color that they can't actually afford to live on basic income? Some of the bigger challenges are in fact out of their control. How women are portrayed in the media, for instance. Most women of color do not feel like they are portrayed positively in the media. How that plays out in the boardroom is that women of color often experience being discredited for their work, being sexually harassed, experiencing microaggressions, intimidation and bullying, work exhaustion, retaliation, and tokenism. Racial and gender wage discrimination has long been a fact, unfortunately. But the resentment that women of color feel when they're seeing or being overlooked for promotional opportunities amongst their peers is a real issue. So opportunities, sorry.
I don't say, yeah, let's take that on. Maybe this is possible. I'm subscribed to that type of like frame of mind. But when you're constantly overlooked or someone's not giving you opportunity or that those things kind of tear at your awareness. You're like, I know I'm the best at this job. I know that or if you're constantly so dishappy here or you're constantly those type of things. I'm not saying that was so specific, but I have here too. They're just
I just told that.
they're just making you happy to be in a space when you're like, no, I'm not just happy I'm here because I am someone. I'm someone who brings value. I'm someone with a voice. I have my things to contribute. So
Everyone wants to grow and challenge themselves. Like, how dare you put me in a box?
put me in a box. So it hurts me to put into a box. It hurts me
Yeah.
just for being you. Like I said, I really strive to be excellent in how I treat myself, how I present myself, how I just in this world, how I move. So if I'm doing that and you're still telling me it's not good enough, it's hurtful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what else can I do? I'm already like not sleeping. I'm already doing all of my tasks to get here.
Yeah.
Like, what else do you want to do?
I'm making sacrifices for my family. My kids are at home. I'm here working. I'm here to be what I need to be for this opportunity. And you're telling me, or you're giving me urge or causing me stress.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And girl, I'll need therapy after this.
So we really need to consider, does the music industry cultivate an environment for nurturing relationships? Well, most women of color are not in relationships. Actually, 25% report that they are the breadwinners in their relationship, and that has affected their relationship dynamic negatively. So we need to discuss culturally what it means for a woman of color to have agency over their lives, now that they're choosing to take on careers over family, nurturing families. So most women of color report being primary caretakers, which also contributes to the likelihood that they are not going to have children while they're in this industry. So the opportunities for change would be to offer family support in the form of daycare or extended maternal and paternal leave, as well as flexible scheduling or work from home opportunities so that they can create a better work-life balance. Also contrary to popular belief, women of color show up for each other in many different ways. Cross-collaboration and support through social media being the top two. Support channels at work are underutilized by women of color, where half report that even if they did exist in the workplace, they probably won't be using them. Women of color believe the biggest issue is also the best opportunity for change in the music industry. First, hire more women of color in senior leadership roles. Second, pay them what they're worth.
Like, obviously, we have these stigmas already who knows who she is, knows what she brings to the table, and let it be known. And if that's free or if that's aggressive,
And that is my mentee, so it's great to see her resonating with the messages that we're speaking on today. Women of color cannot afford to wait on existing systems to drive the challenges that we need to make progress in our careers. As founder and chairwoman of Juke Joint Foundation, I recognize that nothing in this industry moves without us. So what we've done at Juke Joint Foundation is we're creating our own community of resources, programming, and funding initiatives to restore equity and to provide the industry with access to qualified, vetted individuals. One of the main things that I hear all the time after giving this research study is, how do we access more women of color? We don't know where to find them, as if we're not already in the room. So now there is no excuse. There is a community where you have access to people who are experienced in the music industry and who are overqualified for most of the positions available here. Women of color in the form of scholarships, grants, and access to music visibility events. As the culture creators of the world, women of color are adding value to any music company. And with your support, you demonstrate a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, all while investing in programming and initiatives aimed at supporting the most marginalized groups amongst the music community. Together, we can change the world. Please visit jukejointfoundation.org for more information on how to become a member or to donate to the mission of empowering women of color in the music business. Before I go, I want to acknowledge the Music Biz Association, Women in Music, and the Recording Academy for distributing the survey. And as a special gift to South by Southwest attendees, you all gain free access to the interactive data research dashboard, where you can view the results of the 2023 study until March 31st, using the coupon code South by Southwest 23 at pubroyaltyqueen.com/plans. And it is an interactive dashboard. So if you select any of the information, it will also adjust automatically information that's curated within that study. Thank you. Any questions? Happy to take questions. If you have any, please use the mic.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your presentation. A lot of information to sit and simmer on. I had a question. You mentioned the correlation between mentorship and bottom line.
Yes.
Sort of didn't hear everything you said, so I wanted to just re-ask
Sure.
if you could repeat that and maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. So in 2018, there was a report that was issued by the Berkeley Institute about women in music and the music industry, and they determined that your bottom line actually increases by $40,000 over the span of your career if you have a mentor. So it's unfortunate that most of us don't have mentors because that affects how much money you bring home at the end of the day.
So I have a question. There's lots of companies right now, big corporations, that are like establishing these programs as on-ramps. And having participated in some of these programs myself, they feel a little bit performative and not actually actionary. So what can we do as a community or as women participating in these programs to make sure that they're actually beneficial and holding our seniors or our superiors accountable?
I get this question all the time as a consultant for DEI initiatives. First, you need data. Data is being used in the music industry for everything from trends in the music industry to how do we invest in artist campaigns. So why not use the data to also drive social equity and changes? Now that there is data, unfortunately this is one of the first of its kind, hopefully there will be more expensive beyond the US and into other territories of the world. But also consider opening safe spaces, right? You have to create opportunities for people to engage with each other and have open and honest conversations. Most people are very sensitive about how they go about asking questions, getting defensive about the answers that are being offered to them. We need to just learn to respect each other and to understand and be compassionate with people's different lived experiences.
So I was gonna ask more about ways that men and people of color can open spaces. Obviously, you kind of answered that, right? Just creating safe spaces to have conversations. But there's almost a therapeutic process to that, right? Because you have to, I guess, quell the defensiveness that comes when you begin to open those spaces and really start diving into those questions. So I guess in your opinion, what does that process really look like? I guess like from a top-down perspective.
So it's no surprise that this is a boys' club culture environment that most women of color have to engage in. I think what is necessary for men to do is to stand up for women, as well as when they're having these locker room talks amongst each other, stand up for women, speak up, speak on how that's disrespectful, speak on how this person actually has contributed a lot to these conversations or these projects. Allow them to take credit for the work that they're putting in. Don't mansplain, that's a huge thing too. These women are overqualified, so when they're walking into these rooms, they already have an established level of understanding of business practices. And a lot of times, from my own experience, I'm in music tech, I'm over-explaining myself a lot. But I think when we have open dialogue and when people are able to stand up for each other, we can drive a lot of change in that way.
I wanted to ask for a piece of advice, if possible. I'm about to graduate from NYU with a degree in data science and business.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited. I am going to work in quant finance, but a dream of mine is definitely to work in entertainment analytics, so I totally geeked out about all the visualizations you had. I wanted to ask, how can I enter myself into that space for someone who's been working hard in finance and making those connections, thinking I wanted to work in investment banking, but now realizing I really do want to work in music, tech, and film. What's the best way? Would you say grad school, LinkedIn? What is the
Join Juke Joint Foundation. Gain a mentor. Someone will see what you have to offer. We have student membership as well. That's a $50 annual fee. But you gain access to a network of people who have been in this business and are in the finance sector of the music industry. I'm a data scientist myself, so I understand there's a lack of community amongst us. So this is an opportunity to build those relationships. I would also like to add that this is a relationship-driven business, but I would like for us to consider adopting a meritocracy, one where people can advance based off their skill level and their qualifications and experience.
Hello, I am also from NYU, going to be graduating this spring with a degree in music business. Thank you. Thank you for being here, by the way. So I was wondering, through the mentors I've had throughout the years, I've begin to learn that these companies need us as much as they assume that we need them. So I'm wondering, as I'm transitioning into full-time roles in the music industry, what do you think are the questions I should be asking in my interview to make sure that this company is doing what they need to be doing to establish DEI, make sure I'm important in the room and not waste my time on a company that when I get there, the culture isn't satisfactory?
Anytime I enter into a workspace, I would ask the question, what is the fit for me here culturally? I always find that I've been the only person of color in a lot of the rooms, and that creates this need to overperform or exceed expectations, which is an unfair responsibility. So that would be the question I would ask your hiring managers to find out, what does it look like on a normal day for a person of color? What kind of initiatives and programming are you offering to level the playing field? And what kind of mentorship can I expect in these working environments? what does feedback look like for me in this space? Is it on a quarterly basis? Is it per project? That's what I would ask.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to see you again. So as we're talking about mentorship and how important it is for your trajectory of earnings in the future, what are ways that women of color in the music industry, and I guess broadly also, can go about getting a mentor?
Again, Joint Foundation, the reason why we created that environment is because I have a load of friends that are not front-facing roles in this business, but they're so isolated, there's no place for them to go when they're experiencing grievances or distresses in the workplace. A lot of the times, the corporate industry, they decide we can just take it because we haven't spoken up about it. So in order for you to actually create some kind of meaningful change, you would want to build your relationships with people who have experienced that and help you to navigate those scenarios. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
A quick question. I haven't been in school for many, many years, but I know you did mention something about bringing these programs or making students aware of these different programs within entertainment that they can possibly take on in high school.
Yes.
Question, are they in high schools or how do we get them?
That is the problem. I believe this diversity, equity, and inclusion, the programming is targeting people at the college level. There's this college to internship pipeline programming, which is great, but most people of color, not just women of color, when they attend college, they already know what industry they're wanting to pursue. And most of them do not go into media arts programming, to be in the music business. So I would offer educators an opportunity to say, hey, here's a curriculum where all of these roles, finance, legal, technology, management, here's what all of that entails, and allow them to make a choice before they send out applications for college. But also, I would engage with colleges also to give them a full view of what the music industry actually looks like, because from an outsider point of view, they might think the industry is just the artistic side. There's so many different ways to enter into this industry.
So then my question is, because I want to know, and if I could be a part of helping, I don't know anything about this, but how do we put a curriculum together to get inside high schools?
I would start with the music program. Most people, I would assume, I didn't do the research on this, but my peers, I'll just say, a lot of us were actually creatives before we decided to enter into the business side of the industry. So you're looking at musicians, you're looking at people who are performers. Those are the people that you would want to target. If there are social groups within the school or in the community or neighborhood, that's where you would begin with programming.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, first of all, this outfit is everything.
I mean, we've got the pink thing going on. I love that for us.
I have a couple of things. Can you go back one slide so I can take a quick picture of that? Make sure I have the code and everything. But I'm at Columbia College Chicago. A few of my colleagues are here. And congrats to all the seniors graduating from NYU. I don't know if you have any of our Columbia students in here, but I am. I'm curious because I know you mentioned mentorship many times, and I'm going to definitely tell them about Joint Foundation. One of the things that I'm interested in is where are we missing the mark in higher education? What things can we be doing, putting in place to make sure, especially our women of color in our departments, are getting the connections that they need. So when they graduate, it's not a traditional, role that they're going into. So how can we make sure that they're getting what they need?
I think the biggest challenge for most college students is how they're going to afford going through college, right? So even before we're talking about bridging the gap between college and your career, it's how do I even get through the semester? So again, when we're talking about student loan debt, having to take out debt in order to finance your education, but also working programs while you're in school, that changes how much focus that you have while you're in that program. So I think being able to offer more financial support, sponsorship, commuter benefits, anything to alleviate some of the stress so that they can focus on the curriculum.
Y'all talk. Hi, my name is Ember. Couple questions, but I'm trying to make it into one long one.
Okay.
So as far as like a seat at the table, I know we're talking about the disparities with the mentorship. Fortunately, unfortunately, I got into this whole business. I started like an own umbrella entertainment company with media and performance arts, and music is a deep passion of mine. I was not able to complete college. And when I was there, I wasn't in there for like an arts program. And I am finding that like a lot of the people who I do encounter, they're driven more by passion than education. And I have become a mentor. And part of the reason I'm here is because I would like to know what I'm doing. So what I guess my biggest question is, as somebody who doesn't necessarily have even access to the collegiate resources or the mentorship, I'm a bit more than just trying to get a seat at the table, I'm trying to get in the building. So instead of just, because I'll kick it in, but I don't want to just ruin it for people behind me. I'm trying to see different ways I can come up with strategies and educate myself in order to be able to educate other people for different opportunities. Because I'm one of those people, I'll build my own, but I just need to know where to get the materials.
But to your point, just about building your own opportunities, because there is this glass ceiling, which we were speaking on in terms of the lack of being able to exist in senior leadership roles in this business as a woman of color, a lot of us are forgoing the career, driving up the career ladder and starting our own businesses. Women of color are the highest rated entrepreneurs in America. So you're in good company, let me just say. But in terms of kicking through the door, gaining access, Juke Joint Foundation members are also members of the Music Biz Association, so you would actually have access to being a part of conversations at the high level, the B2B partnerships, being able to establish a name for yourself in that community. There are also other organizations, Women in Music, that offer resources. She Says So Foundation, for those internationally, can have access to networks and resources for expanding your brand and your skill sets.
Would that be would that list, because that was a lot to remember. And
oh, how about this? I can give you a list after we're done with the Q&A.
Thank you.
Okay.
One thing I noticed about a lot of sort of the roots of the problems that you brought up is there's a lot of intersectionality between the root causes of a lot of the stuff you brought up, from reforming higher education to reforming K-12 education. I was wondering how we can work to sort of find that solidarity with other industries and find that intersectionality.
Oh, it's, again, the data. So many people have come up to me from other industries like, hey, can you do this for us in the film industry? We're having the same problems. But because we're having these conversations, we are creating more environments to have the data presented to us. So I believe it's the data that drives our decision-making processes. We can help pinpoint specific challenges. Well, she hasn't done this side of me.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm short, so I'll try. I'm also from Columbia College Chicago, and we have a lot of our students here as well. And one of the things you mentioned about internships, right? And I do see a lot of students and of color find so hard to find internships, right? And you mentioned, like, you know, you have to spend time to network and all of that, while they are also working 1, 2, 3 jobs. And it's hard for them to find internships and then look for paid internships.
Exactly.
So one of my real, struggle is in music business, it is so hard for them for first to connect. And then they already know that there are others who have firsthand because they know, right?
Right.
So, you know, I always often like struggle with this. It's like, where can we have a huge data or where we can, like, you know, people who are educators can just channel them to like, hey, go here.
Okay.
And
I feel like I'm a Joint Foundation. One of the things that we do. One of the
this is the
basic-
first time I've ever heard, so.
Yeah. Well, Joint Foundation allows our members to post job opportunities as well as internships. It's allowing us to see people that are wanting to enter into the music industry, not only gain the access and the resource to learn more about it, to network with other people that are actually in the business, but to lift people that haven't yet entered into the business and say, hey, here's an opportunity for you. So, job posting boards are available to our members at Joint Foundation.
Well, thank you for creating that.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. I think it's the beginning of something special.
And I also wanted to know, I would tell, you know, those graduating seniors, I know some of you mentioned you are directly coming from finance background, come over to Columbia and we have a master's program for music business. I would love to talk to you.
Hello, my name is Courtney Roberts. I'm an entertainment and recording industry management student at SXSW University in Houston. We actually briefly connected after your interview with Tammy Latrell, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So I got a lot of insight from that, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm in the process of really trying to figure out what avenue I want to take on, because I have a little bit of experience in like indie A&R and management work that I did back in 2020, 2021. But now I'm trying to like broaden my horizons in a way and tap into various avenues and learn as much as I can. Like you being in a tech space, that's not a space like I've always thought of myself being in. Like I come from a family that's involved in STEM, and I'm kind of like the artsy child and into creative stuff. So I just want to know, as someone that's coming from like a creative-driven path, or that's, you know, was previously like pursuing that, what areas in tech do you think that I could be open to or look into? Because I'm not very familiar with that side of like the music industry.
There are so many new platforms also opening to expose new tech, music and tech products. I entered into the music tech space by way of being an expert in publishing, which is a very, I guess, shadowy place in the music industry. A lot of people don't know about the inner workings of publishing. And so because I've maintained a career in various roles in publishing, it offered me an opportunity to now build systems that I know competitors might have. And essentially, music technology is one of those places in this business. It's also a very shadowy place. You don't know until you're actually in it. I don't know what I would offer to that. You're not interested in necessarily the data science or product development side?
Honestly, at this point, I'm open to everything.
Got it.
Like I'm
Okay.
trying to learn as much as I can, because at the end of the day, everything intertwines. At the end of the day, so.
Well, let's connect after this, because I think I might be able to show you some resources that I use in the music and tech space, as well as organizations that help bridge the gap. Sure, no problem.
Thank you so much for providing this data. It's super insightful, like powerful, if anything.
Thank you.
Similarly, the Black Lives in Music UK
Yes.
report did a very similar thing. I was wondering, while you were carrying out looking at the information, whether there were any trends that we should be looking at. I mean, this report is great, one thing, but over time, we still need to sort of look at ourselves as an industry and see where we can make the changes. What do you think are the trends that we should be looking at?
Well, the main trend is that, again, women of color are entering into the industry. They're overqualified for these roles and being overlooked for opportunities because management have no idea who they are. They're not actually taking the time to give feedback to people who don't look like them, unfortunately. So we need to make sure that these senior leaders actually have more frequent conversations with their employees. I would also say that women of color tend to start their own businesses because of the glass ceiling, and unfortunately this industry is losing out out on talent because of that. So that is the trend that I would be cognizant of as a corporate head. How do we retain our employees? How do we retain the diversity within our organizations? Because they're there, but if they don't have an opportunity to advance, then they will leave to create their own.
If I could just add something lastly on that, do you feel that we should also sort of perhaps get a bit more granular with the data and look at like sort of different sectors and perhaps anonymous anecdotal research as well?
See, that is what Pub Royalty Queen podcast is. As a host, I ask questions about not necessarily your role in the industry or how you got to where you are. I think that's kind of a redundant conversation that's being had. Instead, how do you feel about where you are? How have you had mentorship? What have they provided for you? Or what is your mama I made it moment? Have you even had an opportunity to sit with the accomplishments that you've made in this business? We are in this culture where it's one project after the other. You don't have time to really digest that this is a very privileged space to be in. And because there are so few women of color in this business, we're taught to compete against one another instead of build with one another. So Pub Royalty Queen podcast helps to expose some of that within our own lived experiences and to share and see ourselves within each other. Thank you. No problem.
Okay, so you talked about mentioning the HBCUs and the lack of essentially women that are transitioning from HBCUs into the industry. I'm a double HBCU graduate and felt the need to go to a PWI because, or in my third pursuit of education, felt the need to go to a PWI because of what appeared to be a lack of acknowledgement coming from HBCUs, in elite HBCUs at that, to essentially become a contender in the industry, and then also creating my own table, becoming an entrepreneur. So having to do all of the things to even compete in an industry where my peers are not necessarily having to go, like you say, the extra mile.
Right.
So can you go into the data about what it looks like as HBCU graduates coming and trying to, pursue this industry, especially when you have males, for the most part, that are coming, that are saying they're HBCU graduates, some of which may not have technically graduated from the HBCU, but at least went there, and how the industry is really accepting. Because even when I was in school, they were not necessarily catering to us, or they come do the one table and check the box. And what is really being done to say we are catering to, because that is where we are, but it's easier to go to a PWI, it seems like, and just pluck the 2% there and check the box.
Well, I think culturally, HBCUs were built so that we can become doctors and lawyers and financiers, not necessarily media arts representatives. So that's number one. These private institutions, they're looking to create skill sets that are cross industries. So there's a space for it, but when it comes to entering into the music business, there are things that aren't being taught in those classrooms, and you're having to learn and navigate on your own, which is why a lot of us are in management roles. We're kind of on the foot level, ground level, just learning on the fly with our artists that we represent. And for a lot of women of color, that is a segue into the music business side of the industry, is via the creative aspect. So I don't know what the answer is for that, but I do believe that structurally HBCUs are focused on specific industries, and there's a reason for that also. Perhaps take on some curriculum or extra. I know you're already two degrees in, but there are programs available for diverse groups of people to understand music business as well.
All right, so I have a question. I have to written it down. So I'm HBCU alum from Bowie State University of Maryland. I am a music teacher that went into DJing, and I performed, but I realized that living in Maryland, we're known and we're heavy on education, but when it comes to performing in the arts, I've done better with travel. I wanted to know, and I saw with the application where you have the memberships, how do you think of Maryland and DC for being a section for the arts there or for performers? Because I am always looking to relocate because of how my talent, everyone thinks is amazing when I travel, but in that area, everyone looks at it as a weekend thing or a gig just on the weekends or so. So what is someone like me who can do both, I can educate as well, but I love to perform. What does someone like me in the music industry need to do to grow?
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with Maryland, DC entertainment, but I know there is a music market there. I think in general, when it comes to artist development, that's a conversation about branding yourself, gaining your fan base, making sure that they're loyal, using data that's available to target them, and learning how to market yourself, regardless if you're an artist or just simply a person in the workforce. Learning how to market yourself is the most important thing. I think there's a possibility to break open, even more open, the Maryland and DC areas. And it takes women like us to start those kinds of initiatives.
Are you looking to open a chapter there?
Oh, absolutely. This is an international, yes, Street Joint Foundation is an international organization, so yes, for sure.
Okay.
Anyone is welcome.
Thank you.
Hi again.
Hello.
I just want to know, what would you tell your younger self and the generation that's coming up now? What would you tell them? How would you advise them as to like the different parts in the industry, how to get into
How to navigate. Okay, so I'm sure I'm not the only person that's experienced this, but I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and I went to a predominantly white institution from the time I was 5 through grade 12. And so I grew up understanding what tokenism was and the expectation of me to exceed and excel. I used to resent my folks for doing that, making me go to a predominantly white institution, and I thought they sent me there to get a better education, quote unquote. But what I realized was that they were actually teaching me how to navigate in a world where I would be the only woman of color in most rooms. And so what I would say is the advice I would give to young folks out there likely experiencing the same thing is to know that there is something that can become of this. You become a person who can, it builds your character, you can navigate the world a little bit easier, gain access to more opportunities because now you're exposed to different lifestyles. And that you're special, you know, that you can actually become whoever it is that you want to become in this world. And music industry, it is a privileged place to be, but one of the things that I want to do, and what is my mission, is to make sure that people who are skilled and qualified and experienced have the same access and resources as people who started this system that we operate in.
I am really active in like my local community, and I was wondering if you have any suggestions on bringing these conversations to like city establishments. And yeah, just starting conversations and being able to even bring events like this to just more local communities. I cater towards like the middle class artists, so not necessarily people who are wanting fame, but just wanting to support themselves through music. So yeah, just more smaller scale, not so.
Completely. I do this on many different stages. I want to do this more in schools because this information is new. A lot of people don't have access to it. And I'm also an advocate for independent artists. So in terms of being your own boss, that's something that I will definitely advocate for and try to inspire others to do in this business. So absolutely, let's have a conversation. All right. I appreciate everyone for being here, and please use the information to advocate for yourself. Now that there's data, this is what drives these changes, so please use the information.